and corporates. Dr. Sharma addressed International Research Conference on India-UK Economic and Regulatory Perspective organized by University of Portsmouth, UK, seminar on global value chain at University of Leeds. On 30th August 2021 and 31st August 2022. He appears in various prestigious panel discussions conducted by various TV channels such as Lok Sabha, Sansad TV, Doordarshan, CNBC, and various other private channels in more than 200 times. He is a regular participant in the prestigious program Market Mantra of All India Radio. He is a member of editorial board of General Press of India, advisory group of Birla Institute of Management and Technology, and others. He is member of industry monitoring group, Reserve Bank of India, and professional forecaster team, Reserve Bank of India. He is MPhil in industrial economics and PhD in international economics from prestigious Punjab University, Chandigarh. So, we would like to present you the greens of the field. You can tag your tree from the geotagging system. Now, I would like to call our Dean of Academics, Tarun Singh, to address us.
Good afternoon. Come on, I need to come back to me. Good afternoon. Thank you. So let me first rise on this occasion and thank Dr. Sharma for taking his time out to address our students. And obviously the topic is quite apt, as well as I believe it's quite near to the heart and mind of the present government. And whatever it happens in terms of positive and growth towards that objective, it will be good for all Indians. So that is something which is very heartening. The second level, I would also I would say congratulate Professor Brinda because she took this initiative. I believe she was approached by AICTE, she took it. She said we will organize it. Obviously, she took the help of Student Economic Council. So thanks Dr. Jain for making it happen. Now, my dear students and dear colleagues, Professor Tripathi, Professor Ritika, these three are economists here, sir. So we have our own economic state. And sorry, Professor Jeeta Sarkar is an expert in human resource. Incidentally, since last, I would say, 4 months, I've started reading geopolitics. I'm basically a student of strategic management, so generally we read more in terms of industry or firm. But the unit of analysis could be even a country. And when you talk about geopolitics, the inherent part of that is geoeconomics. So obviously, geoeconomics cannot be understood if you don't take country as a unit to do some analysis. So whatever I could read, I could find there are 2-3 things which are simultaneously going on. The first one is, I would say that there are 3 pre-frameworks which I think I'm trying to create some thoughts on that. One P stands for print, control P, which you all understand. Second one is called power, and third one is called paradigm. The P is something linked to which is called the printing of US currency. The US currency became a single reserve currency after Second World War. Prior to that, pound was the single, I would say, reserve fiat currency. And after the rise of dollar, one thing which is uniquely happened is that after in 1970s, it was de-linked with the gold. So now US can print as many as you can, like you simply do the print. That's why I'm saying it is control P. So US can print as many currency as it wants. And since US dollar is the reserve currency, otherwise if you do this, you will have very hyperinflation. So that, in fact, that inflation is exported out to rest all of the world because we all are actually accumulating dollars. So US is able to print. Why it is able to print? Because that's called the second P, US has the power. The power to maintain this currency as a single reserve currency, number one. Number two, in order to do that, first of all, it has to control all big multilateral bodies like UN, IMF, World Bank, UNCTAD, multiple like this. Then second, it has created a lot of flashpoint around the world. And that flashpoint say that there is a disputed thing between two countries. For example, Kashmir between India and Pakistan, Taiwan is something which China wants, Russia, Ukraine. So there are multiple flashpoints around it. Then Iran, North Korea, etc. What US do, it will try to sanction one country, and then the other country who is having border with that, it will try to supply and sell its own arms. So that's the second logic. It try to create a power, because that power is required. Otherwise, you cannot and just keep on printing your currency. For example, our reserve is $600 billion, and US in last 1.5 years already printed more than $3 trillion. So, and in fact, you could take it that the Chinese reserve is $3 trillion, and China took to amass this much reserve over a period of 3 decades to reform. This started in 1979. And US printed the same amount of currency in immediate period of some months. So now everybody is realizing that actually we are being taken on a ride. So this is what the third P comes, which is called paradigm. Now we are having a sign that this paradigm is being broken. It means US is losing its sheen as a world superpower. Now there are multiple perspectives of it. If it happens, it's a rise of multipolar world. In this rise of multipolar world, the final currency may not be a single reserve currency. It could be a currency which is called a multi-order. Fine. So we already must be knowing that we have recently carried out BRICS conference, Brazil, Russia, India, China, then South Africa is part of it, and more than 10 African countries are becoming part of it. So this is something which all is happening. The India and China are rising a lot. The Indian say is increasing worldwide. Now, for India to become a developed country till 2047, we have got a lot of benchmarks. A lot of these benchmarks, in fact, have been suggested and imposed by the Western country itself. Some are in terms of per capita income and all those stuff. So they say we can maximum become a middle income country, not an high income country. But I believe we have got a lot of ingredients to be that, and obviously our esteemed guest would be definitely highlighting a lot of points on that. The first is we have got democratically elected stable government, and we have got democracy. Second one, we have seems to be a shining spot in the gloomy world market. Third one is we have a very macroeconomic stability. We have got all ingredients to pursue growth for next 2 to 3 decades. And the fourth one, which we are witnessing, especially in the last 7-8 years more, our say in geopolitics is actually gaining more traction. We are able to call shots. For example, we have never seen that a country which is a developing is able to impose something on a developed country, like in terms of take out your diplomat, like we recently the split between India and Canada. That is something that is a sign that it's showing that India is actually able to put its weight. Earlier, we were actually putting less weight than our actual weight. Even now, we are not putting more weight than our actual weight. We are still putting less. But think about the time when we will put weight as much as we have, and then on the second level, when we can pay weight more than what we have. That's what disproportionate with US do. So I believe with this particular background, I would once again welcome Dr. Sharma for taking his time out. He's got 35 years experience, expert in all those stuff. So I thought this is my small take, and obviously if I'm wrong or correct, any point, sir, you can correct me wherever you think so. So with this, I would again request, give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Luka. Now I would like to ask Dr. Sharma, kindly address us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Every members of Jaipuria Institute of Management, and most of them are economists, and I appreciate that. And I'm happy that economists are attending this very important prestigious conference. And dear students, very good afternoon to all. This topic, Amrit Kaal Vimarsh Vikas Bharat, Viksit Bharat at the date of 2040 or 47. That is very, very important, because now every thought process is now evolving around the progress of India. to become a developed economy by 2047 and to do a lot of things during this Amrit Kal, which has started in 2022. So in the next 25 years, we are going to become a developed economy with a lot of reforms by the government and a lot of efforts by our citizens and students, our farmers, our businesses, and our trade and industry. So to become how India is looking at global charts, what is the background and what is the backdrop of this Amrit Kal? I will go back in the last 15 years. I'll start from the Lehman crisis, how the 15 years slow trajectory has been built up by so many developments, because these 15 years were very, very dynamic for the global economy that started in 2008 at the time of Lehman crisis. I think you know about the Lehman crisis. That was a financial crisis which caused US economy in the downturn, severe downturn, and growth rates of many economies in the advanced economies and the emerging and developing economies were decelerating like anything. And the markets were falling down to the new lows, and there was severe financial and trade quagmire in the global economy, and the economies were in a severe downturn. So before the US recovered with a lot of reforms and stimulus to its respective economy and its states, Europe was in severe crisis in 2012 and 2013. European growth rate was in the negative trajectory for many years, and Europe was in severe downturn and was not able to recover with the many reforms undertaken by the respective European countries. And before the Europe recovered in 14-15, Japan was in severe crisis. Japan's economy was hit by some climatic conditions, and economy was not able to recover to the level of 1% or 2% or 3%. Japan operated in the negative trajectory for many quarters, and that was a severe impact of decelerating growth in the US and Europe on the Japanese economy. And before Japan recovered in 2015 or 2016, China was in a severe crisis. China's fundamentals were starting decelerating. The demand for Chinese products also was impacted, and China's consumption scenario was also impacted, and China's growth rate was decelerating from 8% to 7%, and then 7% to 6%. And before China recovered in 17-18, there was a severe trade war between US and China that impacted the global growth trajectory by $7 to $10 trillion. The impact was at around 1% of the global GDP. So that was a severe downturn in the many economies, and India was also hit by this trade war, and India's growth rate also decelerated to somewhere 4 to 5% in those years in 2018-19. And before this effect was nullified or this effect was addressed, coronavirus hit the global economy. So starting from the Lehman crisis, Europe was in crisis, Japan was in crisis, then China was in crisis, then there was a trade war between US and China, and then coronavirus hit. And before we recovered from corona, with a lot of reforms and stimulus provided by the government in the various economies, then the Russia-Ukraine war hit the world economy in 2020. And again, we decelerated from more than 5% growth rate in the world economy to 3.5% in 2022. That was the effect of the geopolitical developments and economic segmentation, as discussed, that these are the severe downturns caused by the geopolitical developments, the geoeconomics, and then the downturn in the advanced and emerging economies because of the fragmentation and because of the monopoly of the natural resources. And before we recovered from Russia and Ukraine, now this is elaborated by the recent crisis of Israel and Gaza, that is again decimating the sentiments of the producers and the consumers and the policymakers and the financial markets. So again, so year after year, there are a lot of developments in the global economy, and these challenges are impacting the trajectory of reforms and the GDP numbers and the financial markets in the same country. So how these problems are settled? Firstly, recently, US, there was a problem of the US debt ceiling that they have settled, and they increased the trajectory, they increased the ratio of the debt to GDP ratio, and they fixed this problem. Then there was a banking problem, like the people were shifting from the some banks to the other cooperative banks to the other significant banks. That is also settled in the advanced economies. But the downside risk still remains. Firstly, inflation trajectory that can emerge anytime because of recent geopolitical developments. And number two is the climatic situation. Like climate eruptions are now severe. Anywhere, anything can happen in the world economic system or the world political system, and that is the impact of the climatic change. And third risk is the China risk that is happening because of the China housing crisis. That's why Chinese economy is now in severe downturn because housing sector is a major supportive sector of the Chinese economy. It supports its economy more than 50%. So that's why the China's housing crisis is becoming a severe problem for the world economy because the demand for many commodities and many products will decelerate, and the majorly producing countries will not be able to support their particular GDP numbers. So these are the three, four challenges to the global economy. Of course, the geopolitical developments which are emerging day by day and spreading across the world are the major worrying factor for the global ecosystem at this juncture. On the positive side, if the global geopolitical developments are settled and the inflation trajectory is becoming benign, then there is a scope to re-emerge once again to the level of more than 5% growth rate for the world economy, and various economies will also observe the decelerating interest rates and a good business environment in their respective territories. But still, worries are there, and 4 or 5 factors. Firstly, now corona is not a global health emergency. Number one. Number two, the costs, which were significantly high, the shipping costs, the container costs, these were significantly high. Now these are at the pre-COVID level. Number three, banks are reluctant to lend more to the consumers because of the high interest rates and the financial availability. And number four is the debt costs are impacting the trajectory of the developing economies because now the financial conditions, now the financial numbers, financial funds are at a risk because rate of interest is high. That's why the developing economies are facing debt to GDP ratio, increased number of debt to GDP ratio. That's why they are not able to take decisions and to support their welfare projects because their cost of funds is now increasing. So that's why they have stopped investing more in the infrastructure and the welfare inducing projects, and the growth rates are impacted these both economies. So this is creating the income inequality between the developed economies and the developing economies. If we go by the numbers during the last 10 to 15 years or by 20 years, then there is a great disparity between the developed economies and the developing economies in the income scenario. Now the difference is $40,000 on an average. Developed economies are earning on an average USD $40,000 more as compared with the developing economies in the per capita income levels. So at this backdrop, now our Bharat, Viksit Bharat, candidate of 2047, is looking resilient and strong. So give a big hand to our reforms, our policy makers, our politicians, that they have put the growth trajectory of the Indian economy to significantly high level, and we are looking lucrative in the global charts. Our growth numbers, our ease of doing business, our so many macroeconomic fundamentals are more and more lucrative in the global ecosystem. So I'll start by the nature of Indian economy. As we move from slow to steady, then steady to fast, and fast to fastest, we were very slow in 1950s, 60s, 70s, then we were steady in the 80s and 90s, then we were fast in 2000s, and now we are the fastest growing economy in the major economies. That has happened in the history of Indian economy that we move from slow to steady, then fast to fastest, and fast. We are the fastest moving economy. Not only the fastest, we move from Earth to Moon and Moon to Sun, and we are in the Gaganyaan and all these developments are happening in the Indian economy, which has pushed the lucrativeness of Indian economy in the global ecosystem. And the reforms process that we started from the Green Revolution in the late 60s. Now that has become very, very lucrative. And thereafter, we pushed the reforms to the LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization in 1991. Then there were free trade agreements in the 2000s. We signed the first free trade agreement with Sri Lanka in 2000. Then there were many free trade agreements with the SAFTA, with the ASEAN region. Then we signed the recent free trade agreements with Australia, with UAE, and there are a lot of talks that we must sign the free trade agreement with the European Union and the UK and other advanced economies. So the trajectory of reforms from Green Revolution to Moon has become very, very lucrative, and that has created millions of kilometers of opportunities for our youngsters, for our growing young population, for our students, for our policymakers, for our technocrats. And recent reforms, if I go by the numbers during the last 10 years, starting from the Make in India, that provided a great push to the reforms in the Indian economy in 2014. Thereafter, there were many reforms like the Startup India, then the Stand Up India, then Atmanirbhar Bharat, Ease of Doing Business, then the PLI scheme, Gati Shakti, and National Infrastructure Plan. All these reforms are giving a great push to the Indian economy in a significant way. So, if we compare, you are very, very behind China since the last many years. But if you go by the numbers, during the recent numbers, after the coronavirus, now China is behind us. We are moving ahead of China. If you go by the IMF numbers of the recent years, starting from 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, the China GDP is rated at around 4.1% on an average, and our growth will be more than 6% for the next 5 years. We are ahead of China by 2 percentage points. By 200 basis points, we are moving ahead of China. Not only in the growth numbers, but in the exports also. If you go by the numbers, China will grow at around 3.5% in their export trajectory in the next 5 years, but India's growth rate in the exports will be somewhere between 4.5% to 5%. That is the trajectory that we have achieved in the growth numbers and in the exports. And the effect of reforms. I am giving you the 3 most important numbers, how to calculate the effects of reforms. We started our reforms process in 1991, LPG model, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Then what are the numbers? Firstly, the financial markets, how we moved in the financial markets. So, dear students, on 1st January 1991, the Sensex was 999. 999. So, our index value of Sensex was 999. So, recently we achieved 68,500. You can calculate the percentage increase during the last 33 years. Tremendous increase in the stock markets. Though markets remain volatile, markets are volatile, the nature of the markets is volatile, but markets are providing the great trajectory, great push to our investments. That has happened in the history of Indian economy, that markets jumped many thousand points in the last 33 years, starting from 1991. Number 2, exports. Our exports were less than $20 billion in 1991. And recently, we posted $770 billion export trajectory, including the merchandise exports and the services exports. You can calculate the percentage increase that must be in the thousands also. Number 3, GDP. Our GDP in 1991, financial year 1991, was exactly $266 billion. Now, we are $3,700 billion. You can calculate the 1,000% increase. So, three numbers. First, our demand condition remains intact. That is reflected from our export trajectory. Number two, our financial conditions. We improved 1,000% in our financial markets during the last 33 years. Number three, the growth of GDP. You can check less than 300 to more than $3,700 billion, which we have posted very soon. Now going forward, to become a dual economy, what is required at this juncture? What should be the thought process of the government? What should be the push by our students? And what should be the contribution of our citizens? That should come from their ownership of the things, ownership of their work, ownership of their studies, ownership of their business responsibilities, ownership of their trade trajectory, ownership of their responsibility towards law and peace situation in the country, which is also very, very important. But from the government side, what should be the role of government? What should be the trajectory of reforms going forward? Because we have undertaken a lot of reforms during the last 33 years, starting from 1991, and particularly during the last 10 years, starting from BT. Our business reforms, our ease of doing business improved significantly from 142 to 63 recently. But the cost of doing business still problematic, which is causing a reduced price cost margins of the producers. That's why they are not that much competitive in the domestic and international market. If they are becoming competitive, they will expand their factories, they will deploy more and more machinery, and they will deploy our growing young population in their respective factories in the skilled, semi-skilled, and fully skilled manpower, technocrats and engineers in the form of various managers. So there were a lot of employment opportunities in the trajectory of the factories. So the cost of doing business is still problematic, and I would like to mention the costs you can note down, which are at this juncture very crucial, and you may be asked about these costs in your respective interviews, which are going to happen, I think, next year or after some months. These are the costs. Firstly, the cost of finances is very, very, very problematic. Always, though recently the RBI increased the policy rates, but overall, if the repo rate is 3% or 4%, in that case scenario also India's cost of funds is very, very high. Because MSME, small businesses are not able to take adequate funds from the banks. Banks are sometimes reluctant to provide finances to the small businesses. So this area is very, very problematic, cost of finances. Number two is the cost of energy, cost of power, which is significantly high as compared with the peer economies, the neighboring countries, the competitive countries. So that's why our manufactured products becomes dearer. That's why they are not getting pace in the competition. Cost of power. And third cost, can anyone come out? Some cost, because you are the students of the management and the businesses. So cost. What is next? Third cost part. Cost of logistics. Cost of logistics is very high. Our cost of logistics is 14% of our GDP. And in other economies, in the average of advanced economies is 6 to 7%, and China is also at 9 to 10%. But we are putting 15% in our logistic cost. That is impacting the price cost margins of the producers, and that is also impacting the level playing in the domestic market and their competitiveness in the international market. So the cost of finances, cost of logistics is very high. And the fourth cost. What is the fourth cost? Fourth cost is the cost of compliances. Like there are a lot of compliances in the terms of environment, in the terms of various procedures, licenses, That's why the small factories or the small businesses are not able to fulfill their compliances on the basis of their available manpower in their factories. So this cost is also impacting the price cost margins, because every time there are notices from the government that you appear in Fulana hearing and give Fulana subsidy. All these are impacting the cost of compliances of the business. And the fifth cost is the cost of land. The industrial land is also becoming more and more dearer, so that's why and the availability of land, not only the cost part, but the availability. If you make your mind that I am going to open a factory, then that will be very problematic to acquire some land or to get that from in the industrial area. There were a lot of petitions and a lot of formalities and a lot of licenses to be get from the authorities. So that's why this is again problematic area for the businesses. So these are the 5 basic costs which are impacting the trajectory of businesses in terms of their increased price cost margins, reduced price cost margins. That's why they are not able to become more and more competitive. And what is the solution? Firstly, we have to address all these costs so that the factories are pushing and going in much higher trajectory. They are able to expand. They are able to expand their machinery. That's why then they will be able to deploy more and more workforce in their factories. So for the businesses, the cost part is very important. So now, how to become a developing economy? Because we need more per capita income. Our per capita income is at around $2,000 on nominal terms. Can anyone tell me the per capita income in the advanced economies? If you are able to compare that, can you think about the per capita income in some of the lucrative, happy economies? It's more than $77,000. In Norway, in other Scandinavian countries, they are enjoying because that's why they are happy. They are becoming the at lucrative in the happy. Our per capita income is less than $2,000 in the nominal terms. So how to increase this per capita income? Because our 50% demand comes from the agriculture sector. Because our 50% people are still deployed in the agriculture sector. So demand, 50% demand is only dependent on the income of the agriculture. Because the deployment dependence of the population is 50%. That is simple analogy that 50% people, 50% people are dependent on the agriculture. So the demand is will come only if the incomes are. Then how to increase? Our government tried with the economic reforms, with the farm bills, but those were not successful. Unfortunately, why I am saying so? That agriculture sector is a big push for the economy. If we push the agriculture sector, then the growth of manufacturing sector will also become disabled. So if the agriculture income is increased, then they will demand more goods and services. The manufacturing sector will also flourish. The people in the factories, the entrepreneurs will be able to deploy more and more workforce. They will expand the machinery. They will deploy more machines, deploy more people, and those people will also earn from their incomes, their salaries from the factories. Okay, and then the income distribution will also become benign in the coming times, because firstly we have to push the trajectory of reforms in the agriculture sector. And here I am going to provide a few very surprising numbers. You must note down that agriculture sector during the last 4 or 5 years is becoming a major lucrative sector of Indian economy. During the last 4 or 5 years, agriculture sector is posting a more than 3% growth rate consistently, which has not happened during the last 75 years. If you go by the numbers starting from 1951, You check the numbers, there is a deceleration in the agriculture growth rate after a few years. But consistently growing agriculture sector we have observed during the last 5-6 years. Agriculture sector is growing more than 3% consistently. Number two, exports of agriculture sector. Exports of agriculture sector increased from $30 billion in 1920 to $40 billion in 2021 to $50 billion in 2022. Every year there is an increase of $10 billion in the agriculture. So agriculture sector exports are competing with the exports of software. And what is the opportunity? Our $50 billion agriculture exports are nothing in the global exports. Can you tell me the volume of global exports in the agriculture? It's $1,400 billion. We are only 0.67% of the total agriculture exports in the world economy. So we have a great scope because we don't have to import any input. We have our input, we have our production possibilities, and we have our own farmland. So we have to push this trajectory. Government is doing a lot for the agriculture sector. Lot of reforms have been undertaken during the last many years, and farmers are supported also. And that's why the growth process is becoming more and more lucrative, and their participation is also becoming lucrative in the agriculture sector. So I am submitting here that agriculture sector will drive the growth trajectory of Indian economy, as India is driving the growth trajectory of world economy, because India contributes 15% in global growth. Are you aware of it? India contributes 15% in global growth. What is the meaning of this 15% growth? Means if $100 are added in global GDP, $15 are coming from India. That is the presence of our economy in the global ecosystem, and I would say that we are going to push our trajectory, to support our trajectory of economic reforms, and to become a developed economy, not only a 5 trillion, 10 trillion, 15 trillion, 20 trillion, but a trillions dollar economy that will be more than $30 trillion by 2047 when we celebrate 100 years of our independence. Thank you very much for inviting me, and we look forward that our economy becomes more and more lucrative and our hard is shining, and we are once again becoming soon in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the knowledge you have shared. We are a class of curious minds, and I believe everyone has some questions on their minds. You can ask now by raising your hands one by one.
And my home.
So, yes, I'd like to ask you about internationalization of rupee. How soon would it come to be? Sorry, can you repeat? How soon would we see our rupee internationalized? Yes, government is doing a lot for the internationalization of rupee, because recently they provided a great reform for the international transactions of rupee. I think you must be aware. And that reform is not only for the trade, for the export and import. That is for every transaction that can happen in India. So we have to find out the value of rupee, because you must have observed that rupee is decelerating, and now rupee is at around 83 as compared with dollar. That's because of the geopolitical developments and the vulnerability of the financial market. Sometimes there are inflow and sometimes there are outflows in the market. But definitely India is going to become a great country in terms of its international currency as we do. Why I am saying so? Because why we are pushing the internationalization? Firstly, because we are more and more integrating with the world economy. If you go by the numbers, you consider current receipts, current payments, capital receipts, capital payments. You club these four, these are more than 100% of our GDP. Okay. If you go by the trade numbers only, our trade, including the exports and imports, exports of merchandise, imports of merchandise, exports of services, imports of services. Okay, if you club these four, these are more than $1,650 billion. Okay, and this is a significant number of our GDP, more than 60%. So that's why the internationalization of rupee is needed, because we need more dollar, as our trade trajectory is significant part of our GDP. At around 50%, 48-49% is our trade to GDP. Okay, so that's why the government is more keen for the push of our rupee, so that it becomes more and more prominent in the international market. And recently, you must have observed that rupee is now openly trajected in 1819. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please. Ask more and more questions. You can ask in any language like English, Hindi, Punjabi, or Sanskrit.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. We all are talking about India becoming 5 trillion economy. In what time we will see it?
अगले साल हम 2024 में 4 ट्रिलियन बन रहे हैं. Right? Now we are calling 4 trillion. Next year we will be the $4 trillion economy in 2024, and in 2026 we will be a $5 trillion economy, and in 2030 we will be a $7 trillion economy. Okay. Great.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. So recently we have to free trade agreement with UK and Australia. How is the free trade agreement with India in achieving the goal of 5 trillion economy and way forward?
Yes, very good question. Because why we signed the free trade agreements? That the purpose of free trade agreements is to create welfare. If we are producing something at a higher cost, suppose India is producing this bottle at rupee 40, and other country is able to produce this bottle at the rate of rupee 25, then we should enter in terms of trade that we should import this bottle from other countries, so that we are not wasting our resources to produce at the rate of 40. So many goods and services are interlinked in the global economy and in our economy. So we buy those goods which are cheaper in those economies. That's why we signed a free trade agreement. And we reduce the custom duties. We gradually reduce the custom duties. If right now the custom duties are 20%, then we gradually reduce to 10%, 5% or 0%, so that the government revenue is also not impacted. So that's why we signed the free trade agreement. So we are finding so many opportunities in the European countries and United Kingdom that can create welfare, and the trade trajectory can be increased at a significant way. We can export and import a lot of things, and there are a lot of complementarities between these economies. So that's why we are able, we will be signing the free trade agreements, and we are keen to sign the free trade agreement. But still, there are a lot of discussions on some adequate give and take. Sometimes countries are reluctant that we should not reduce tariff on such products, and we should reduce tariff on such products. That's why this give and take has to be settled on the plausible developments at a table. So that is happening, and we look forward that soon we will see the developments in the free trade agreement. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, as you must be aware of, a new war has been erupted between Hamas and Israel. So how does it will affect India, as India is trying to face Israel as well as Palestine as well, and India has a deep connection with other like Middle East countries. So how does it will affect India's position in future?
Okay, because a very good question actually. Now, you must have observed that Vasudeva Kutumbakam, all world is a village. So if something is happening in any part of the world that is becoming problematic or that creates the turbulences in the whole world economy. So though the Israel and Gaza are not that much significant part of the world economy, their total GDP is less than $600 billion if we club both of the economies. But still, because the psychological factors are, because now people are talking about their countries, this development, that development, those countries are supporting so and so countries, those countries are supporting so and so. That is creating some psychological unrest on the minds of the financial markets and the trade scenarios and the confidence levels. So that's why I believe there will have some impact on the psychological factors and the philosophy of the financial. You must have observed the volatility in the financial markets. The markets are very volatile. Markets are confused. Though we have a great fundamental and we are fastest moving economy and we have great numbers in the trade. We are improving in the job and business, but still the psychological factors like there is some unrest in some part of the world. That's why that is impacting our psychological scenario, and we are not able to sleep well. That what will happen in the morning, and there will be some more alliances between the countries. So that's why all such developments are impacting the mindsets of the markets and the policymakers and the thinkers and the politicians. So unrest and disappointment is there. Yes. Anyone from the backside? Because they were discussing a lot of things, so they should come out with their questions.
So can I ask private thing?
Yes, please.
So we are talking about 2047, right?
Right.
So what I could see is that, of course, right now the growth trajectory is looking pretty well, but there must be certain downsides because 2047 we are talking about net zero economy, and that is what world wants, right? And India being such an industry which will increase its industrialization, right? And that means our prominent sectors have to adopt a lot of technology which will not be, based on fossil fuel. So how you see things changing on the ground? Is industry already discussing this, or this is not yet an agenda item?
No, this is at the top of the agenda because
and how the scaling or transition will affect us.
Firstly, what is the problem at this with the volumes? We are not able to create much volumes. That's why economies of scale are not generated. That's why we are not that much competitive. So firstly, we have to increase the volumes of our production possibilities. And that will come with the adoption of new technologies like Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence. All these developments are going to push the volume numbers and the economies of scale. So if you are not adopting such technology, then we will not be able to create much economies of scale because the advanced, some developing economies, like the emerging economies, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, all these economies are working on such parameters. But a great thing has happened. I was discussing with some entrepreneurs in some flight. We were coming from Germany last year, and he told me that in his factory, he was running a factory of furniture. Then he said, "Sir, I was importing 90% of my raw materials from China. 90% of raw materials I was importing from China. Then I learned the know-how of the technologies to create adequate state-of-the-art furniture. And I deployed a robot also in my factory. And I am working in the Uttar Pradesh area. And now I am importing only 55-60% of my total inputs. So I am generating my own inputs with my technology, my mind. So the transformation is happening, but it is taking time because of our lagging reforms in the past and adoption of technologies, problematic adoption of technologies. But now the businesses and entrepreneurs are becoming more and more aware. They are adopting the technologies which are prevailing in their vast economies. They are observing, they are visiting there, and they are learning their know-how, and they are adopting it in Indian country. So I think in the next, if I go back in the last 25 years, okay, that will be 97, 80. You can observe our economy. We were in the 3 to 4% growth rate, and there was not much advanced technologies. Costs were not extended, but now after 25 years, they are becoming more and more lucrative, and everybody is talking about Indian economy. So now, going again in the upward trajectory in the next 25 years, I think the things will change significantly, and India, with its adoption of new technologies, will be the major growth driver of the world economy. Thank you.
I believe everyone got your answers, right?
I hope so. That everyone is now satisfied. If they have any more questions in their mind, then they can ask.
Anyone have any questions you can ask? Only one question will be taken.
Now I will ask one question. Because they are not coming out with it. Okay. Right?
Yes.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Oh, great, very good. You are the students of the MBA, right?
Yes.
Very good. Can anyone tell me the, yes, can anyone tell me the size of world economy? अपना global GDP कितना है? Don't open your mobile phone. हमारा जो जीडीपी है इंडिया का वो $3700 बिलियन है, राइट? पूरे वर्ल्ड का जीडीपी कितना है 2023? आई है
$105 billion.
है
$105 billion.
Oh, very good, excellent, great, brilliant student. Big hand you. What is your name? रोहित. अच्छा क्या किया आपने? What is your background? Oh, very good. You have great future actually. All the best. Huh? Thank you.
Now I would like to extend my vote of thanks to the sir. So we really enjoyed the session. We learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge with us. I would like to thank Academic Program Committee and Economics Area Faculty members for organizing such a knowledgeable sessions for us. Thank you so much. Now I would like to call Economic Area Faculty members, Professor Virgajan, Professor Amrita Tripathi, and Professor Ritika Gobinani to come forward and facilitate our chief guest. Come please.